Are you tired of fighting the same old dragons over and over again? Wouldn't you rather fight a new family of dragons? Or better yet, wouldn't you rather play as a new dragon species in your 5e or Pathfinder game? Well, now you can. Roll for Combat, the creators of the incredibly popular Battlezoo Ancestries dragons, have done it again with Battlezoo Secret Dragons. This collection of 4 dragon books introduces new families of dragons to the world of 5e and Pathfinder. Now you can play as, or fight, the dragon you never knew you needed. Inside each book, players will find complete rules for playing as one of these new unique dragons, allowing them to unleash new abilities and powers never seen before. Meanwhile, GMs will find pages of monster stats, allowing you to pit these new creatures against your players. Each book features one new family of dragons filled with extensive, in-depth descriptions of their powers and abilities, background and history information, world lore, illustrations, and more to help you introduce these new dragons into your 5e or Pathfinder games. Experience the world of Battlezoo Secret Dragons through 4 new books. Fairy dragons are connected with the Fey realm and love to play pranks and cause mischief. That is, when they aren't conspiring with the courts of the Fey. Misfit dragons are hot, magical messes of magical energy, constantly shifting their physical forms, phasing in and out of existence, or simply releasing random wild magic effects. They're quite a handful. Leshy dragons are deeply connected to nature, allowing them to grow alongside different types of plants, fungi, and leshies. Oh yeah, and they're master chefs as well. And finally, the powerful battle dragons are obsessed with the thrill of combat. Battle dragons love hunting foes, dueling opponents, or commanding their legions to glorious victory. Head over to kickstarter.rollforcombat.com now to secure your copies of Battlezoo Secret Dragons and become the dragon you were always meant to be.
Hello, we're live.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. This one's going to be an interesting one because I have a feeling I might disagree with Steven on the topic, which makes the best episodes.
Really? Why are you going to disagree? You don't even know my position.
I don't. I only know the position you stated in the summary. So therefore, I think we might disagree, but maybe we have the exact same agreement. So it should be about interesting.
You don't know. You don't know. You don't even know where the topic came from because I just made it up. You don't even
I don't know where it came from. All I know is that I suddenly saw this topic flash into my email with no advance notice, and then I saw the summary of it that was up on this page. So I'm basing it only on that. So if your opinion is the opposite of the summary, then we may have a similar opinion.
Yes. The summary is that nerfs might be coming, or they might not. They might be buffing everything, and we're gonna have super duper powered classes. But I don't know. But I will get into that later, where it came from and why I even brought this up, because there's a method to the madness. But before we do
Fair
that,
enough.
Like, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz, and why don't you tell everyone about Dragons, which is ending now?
Yeah, so less than a day. Right. In fact,
12 hours.
It's about 9 hours.
9 hours, whatever. It's going fast.
We're ending this dragon Kickstarter. Secret Dragons, 4 dragon books. It's on kickstarter.rollforcombat.com. You doubtless just saw an ad for it, so I don't need to say the same things that the lady in the ad said, but there's tons of dragons. You should check it out.
That's it. Just dragons.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, there were a lot of good things I could have said, but they're in the ad.
Okay. All right, well, if you want dragons and you want to play dragons and read about dragons and see dragon artwork and just, and in fact, if you could see, I put some new dragons around the board, and one of my favorite is you see up in the right-hand corner, the little goblin dragon above you. Look how fat he is.
The gremlin one?
The gremlin dragon.
Yeah, the mischief dragon's awesome.
Look at it, he's a little fatty. He's just breathing out fire on you, or sorry, acid on you, because he's just having fun. He's like, hey, get out of my lair. Get out of my lair. Brr. He's just breathing acid on you. It's like I'm trying to relax here. I'm trying to rest. So
I like seeing dragons of all different body shapes, and he's got a great expression.
Well, he looks funny. He's just sort of like, get out of my lair. It's like, look, you bothered me. Get off my lawn. It's like the old. I think that might have been one of the. I don't know if that's the worm or not, but I think I'm making that the worm because he's like the big old fat lazy worm dragon who's been doing
I think
nothing.
it probably wasn't, because I think I saw the one that was said that it was the older one and it looked different, but it could be a funny great worm for sure.
Yeah, the problem with the great worms I'm finding is that it's hard to make them look really different because I'll tell the artists, I'm like, make them look really
different and more majestic,
right,
or something
like make
that.
them look more. I was like, more what? I'm like, yeah, that's kind of a problem. It's hard to make them look more because dragons are already kind of a lot to begin with. So it's like, how do you add more to a dragon? And it's actually pretty tough. I'm able to do with like elementals. Those aren't so bad, but for some reason, dragons. They start off pretty mean to begin with, so it's hard to ramp them up past 11. But we'll figure it out. But
Yeah, it should be fine.
it should be fine. But yeah, hurry up, man. We've unlocked something like, I don't even know, there's so many dragons.
A lot. We're close to getting the gold dragon at 115.
No, we already got the gold dragon.
215.
No,
No,
I changed it.
No, we didn't.
We didn't.
We were at 195. We're at 211 now.
Yeah, I made the gold 210. Aha!
What?
Yeah, I did that before. You missed it. Now we're up to the crystal dragon.
I missed it. So you're saying that you secretly made it 210.
Yes.
You never told us to be the person who was putting in the updates, and you just kind of did it.
It's on the site.
You expect me to scroll down to
It's
that
on the scroll. It's at the very top.
when you're changing what the plans
It's
are?
at the very top of the site. Look at it. It's right there.
No, I mean, I see it there now, but
Oh.
like, why don't you get into communication with someone about this?
I did. I just
What?
forgot to include you. I'm sorry. There's a lot going on
No,
right
this
now.
is a serious thing, because also the amount that we're putting into each of these stretch goals is fairly significant. So whether we're going through twice as many of them or not makes a difference.
Well, Mark's pain is your gain, so there we go.
I mean, that's true. He's not wrong, everyone.
But well, that was the only. I just decided at the very end just to get a little bit, because I'd rather have 2 new dragons for each book than rather 1 or 2. I'd rather try to split them out so I reduce.
Well, good news. One of the books is going to get more anyway, because we have
that's
5
true.
sets.
You know what I mean. You know what I mean. So, but the point is, I was trying to get 1 from each family. So I reduced it to 15 at the last. This was done very much at the last second with the guy who does the artwork. So, and I guess I forgot to include Mark. But
All right,
I'll
well,
include Mark.
Steven, you're responsible for writing the updates when we unlock each of them.
No, I can't. I don't have time for the updates. I'm too
I
busy.
don't either. I have something tonight, and I queued up
Oh,
enough
you
time
do?
to do updates for every 10K, but not every 5K.
Well, this one was next anyway. Well, all right.
No. The Gold Dragon's fine. But if we unlock a whole bunch more, we're not going to get updates for all of
Well,
them.
that could be by tomorrow then. It doesn't have to be immediately. That's fine. People expect that. So, all right. Well, we'll see. I mean, it was going super fast, but it slowed down a little. So we'll see.
Yesterday was really great.
Yeah, it was cranking.
And even the day before that, which was in 72 hours.
Yeah, it was cranking for the first 2 days, but we'll see. But check that out, and then because it never stops. I'm starting to get art for Battlezoo Bestiary 3, which is
Battlezoo Bestiary Elemental Storm. There's no number on it. It's not a sequel. You don't need to buy them in any order.
okay. Battlezoo Bestiary Elemental Storm, which is done, and I started to get artwork.
The monsters are done. The supplementary extra material that's in it have not been finished, but the monsters were not only written, but even developed. So it's in very, very good shape right now.
So that's next, and that will be pretty soon. So it's like never stopping. But, this method works well because people get more stuff, and it allows us to also figure out. It's mostly, the Kickstarter is mostly for the print runs. Because it's very hard to know how many to print. And when I do the Kickstarter, I can figure out how many to print and more accurately, because there's a big difference between printing 2,000 and 3,000, or so. And it's just very good. It's very, very accurate. And if I just put the book out without a Kickstarter, it would I don't know how it would do, to be honest. I think it would not do very well, to be honest. So
I think you're right. I think Kickstarters help get sort of attention and focus. So Lord of the Unfinished Project Super Chat, it's Nerf or nothing.
Well,
from the old commercials. Maybe they still use those commercials. I don't know. I don't really watch a lot of commercials nowadays.
why not? That's the best part of TV. In fact, I only watch commercials. I don't even watch TV.
Fair enough.
I only watch
Fair enough. I
commercials.
thought you only watched like 80s movies constantly. Did they have that many
No.
commercials in them
No.
when they play them on
I
streaming services?
watched Taken today, and Taken is not an 80s movie. So
Fair enough.
that's the first time I've seen Taken in a long time. And that movie holds up. Damn, that movie's good. Have you ever seen Taken?
I have not.
Oh, such a classic. It's a good movie. Good movie. You should definitely check that out. It's like a million memes from that. Like that movie basically created a whole subgenre of movies and TV and memes. So I would check it out. It's actually pretty good. So news. Is there any news? I don't know.
I don't think there was a huge news. I mean, there was a ton in the last few weeks, but not really this one past week. Not that I
got
saw.
news. I got news. I got tons of news.
Oh, well, there you go. You said there wasn't, and I didn't see a lot, but you have tons. So what are your tons of news?
Report for Battlecry playtest duty. Why don't you tell everyone about that one? I don't even need.
Well,
that.
yeah, but there hasn't been that news since our last video, because our last video was literally
In case
about
people
that.
missed that. Why don't
Okay,
you...
so you can go right back into our channel and check the last live video, which was a reaction sort of first look where we read through the Commander and Guardian class together in the chat and sort of analyzed them as we were going through. These are two new classes going to be released in Battlecry in quite a while by Paizo, but they're doing the playtest early because they don't want it to collide with the Starfinder playtest, which makes total sense to me. So that is the big thing. It's just not since last time, because the last time was all that.
All that and a bag of chips. I have another interesting. This is actually very big news. Sort of.
Okay.
So Roll20 is integrating with Discord.
Oh, I saw that and then I forgot. You're right. That is potentially huge.
Mm-hmm.
That it'll be one of the integrated like sort of apps that you can just use in Discord. It was a very smart idea for Roll20, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I got invited to it. And the way, I guess it makes sense because it's funny. There's voice and video in Roll20. I don't know anyone who uses it, and it's also a pain. It's such a pain to implement. So why even bother? And I get it. They're an old platform and they've been around forever. But I use Roll20 for some of my games, but we use Discord for our chat and our video. So I might try this. I'm not exactly sure how it works. I guess it works that you use Roll20 inside Discord, and it's like an app within Discord basically, and then everything is integrated together, including the voice and video and Discord with the sidebars, so it's actually inside Discord. But I don't know, I'll give it a try. It's one of those, seems like a good idea. It can't hurt, but I don't know if anyone's really gonna try it out. Sometimes it's too much. You know what? Sometimes putting the same app, sometimes putting everything into one app is not always the greatest move. So I will say that, but give it a try. In my weekly game, which you can find on Monday's YouTube, they went up against the shark octopuses, and tell you, there's one thing. They're they have three-headed sharks on the top, octopuses on the bottom, and they shoot electricity. So they're basically freaking sharks with laser beams coming out of their head on the ocean. They didn't even bother fighting them. They had to get to a whirlpool. And what they did is, and there's one thing I got to say about players, is they sure are creative, is that he cast repulsion on him, the magic user, and everyone failed to save, including the players, so no one could go near him. So he basically was keeping the sharks at bay because they just could not get near him because they failed to damn save it. It lasted for a minute, and they were doing chain lightnings, But how would you rule this? So if a shark, and repulsion means that you can't get within 20 feet of the player character. I think it's 20. No, 40. Sorry, it's 40
It's a
feet.
40-foot.
Yeah, it's 40
and
foot.
If they fail
They
on their,
they can't approach them.
They think they can't approach it. They're well safe for 1 minute.
For 1 minute, which is forever. But they have a reach of 40 feet with their tentacles, and
they can definitely attack you with that. They just can't approach you.
Right, so they couldn't approach or get past that, and they can shoot lightning out of theirs. So
they could definitely shoot the lightning, but they couldn't approach you.
Yeah, so that pretty much. That was the fight. They were like, I'm like, we're not even going to fight these things. We're just keeping you away, and then we're making our way to the exit. And that was it.
So it does say any restrictions on a creature's movement apply only if it voluntarily moves towards you. For example, if you move closer to a creature, it doesn't need to move away.
Ah, okay.
So if they were definitely heading to the exit, the creature could have cut them off and blocked the exit, and then they'd be forced to move towards the creature. It wouldn't be sent away.
But they were pretty fast and moved around pretty quickly.
Fair enough.
Because
they deserve it. They did a lot of work there.
Well, also they were having fun, and I was like, and they were having fun, using a weird mechanic, and they were like, oh, this is really cool. Like they enjoyed the abstract aspect of it and not fighting. So I was like, okay, I played along. I didn't care. But I did try to do, but he said that would not work. And I'm curious what your ruling is that I wanted to do a free willy. I said the shark jumps out of the water and then tries to land using gravity onto the boat. But he's like, no, because that's considered approaching. And I didn't want to get into a big fight. Because I'm like, well, he's not approaching you. He's jumping above you over 40 feet and then letting gravity bring him down.
Okay, I think that it does specifically say this only applies to voluntarily moving towards you.
Well, because he was voluntary,
and I don't think that falling is voluntarily moving towards you.
Right, but he was arguing.
As long as when it was jumping up over, it never came within 40 feet. Right. Falling is sort of an involuntary motion. Yes, it might theoretically want to be set up to where it would be falling, but I think that could probably work.
Yeah.
Lava being says forced movement can also get them closer. That is true as well.
Yeah.
Well, so I think that actually probably worked because it wasn't voluntary motion.
Yeah, I was trying to do it because I was like, okay, he goes down.
It also would be very difficult to jump 40 feet into the air for a creature that didn't have a special ability that let them do it.
Well, they had they're gargantuan. They're in the water. I had him accelerate, and then he had a acrobatics of like 34. So I
mean, that's fair. That is pretty high.
Yeah, that's what I was like. I think he could do it, or at least I was going to make a roll for it.
A PC who had something that gave them good high jumps could easily do that. A lot of monsters never give enough skill-based abilities, so it's not outrageous to be like, well, it's like a shark. It could probably leap into the air like a lot of sea creatures theoretically can. There are even some shark monsters that have that jump into the air and it bite you attack, I think.
Yeah.
So it's not an outrageous thing to have the creature try to do.
I tried to do it, but they started to argue, and then I was like, I don't want to get into it. And then I was like, it's fine.
It definitely is playing within a gray area of the rules because of the jumping, actually. The falling, I think, pretty clear cut isn't voluntary.
That was their argument, is that they shouldn't even try. He shouldn't even try that. And I was like, and then you know what? It was 4 against 1. And you know how it is. The player's like, oh, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. And I'm like, fine. I'm not going to argue. I'm not going to get into it. I was like, I'll let you get away with that. So
save your arguments for when it really matters.
Yeah, they seem to enjoy it, but
if they were having fun, then I guess let them have fun.
Yeah, but I wanted to have
cheated out of it. That would be when you want to do something. I wanted the
shark to land on the boat and start freaking them out.
Yeah, see, for me, doing that jumping thing and having it come on to us after it lost a bunch of turns up until that point would be kind of just a cool cinematic thing to have happen eventually, and then we'd have to figure out how to deal with it. But I could tell for some people they might just have been happy succeeding with that.
I know. So I just wanted to have the image of a gigantic shark octopus landing on the boat and then start biting everyone and grabbing them, and then you go through the whirlpool and then you teleport to Absalom. So I was like, oh, I wanted you all to go and then have the shark at Absalom. I was like, this could have been fun. Could have been so silly, but whatever. It's fine. It's fine.
Fair enough.
We have other news. So according to D&D maker Hasbro, they said they're going to be investing. According to this published today, they're going to put more than $1 billion into 4 video game studios owned by Wizards' corporate parent and literal monopoly maker Hasbro. So it looks like they own, I don't know what they have. Atomic Arcade, Exodus is another one, Skeleton Key is another one. So basically, I didn't know they owned 4 video game studios, and they said they're going to put $1 billion in. $1 billion. $1 billion.
That is a pretty big piece of news, I think.
Yeah.
$1 billion is a lot of money.
Yeah, but the point is like, okay, so there's this weird thing going on in video games where AAA and these huge games that cost 200, 300, 400, just something happening in both gaming and movies where they were investing so much money into these properties that even though they were bringing back $1 billion, they still weren't making money because they were just costing too much. And it used to be that, they would put in, like the Marvel movies, they would put like, $200, $300 million into those movies, and they'd make back $1 billion. And I guarantee that's what happened with the D&D movie, because the D&D movie they put $150 million into that movie, which actually, in retrospect, compared to some of these others, was actually pretty cheap. And they probably thought, this will make $1 billion or like $700, $800, $900 million, which is a profit. But it didn't. It didn't even come close, And so they're using this methodology of like, we're going to spend $1 billion on 4 studios on like basically 4 games. So I was like, really? Do you really think you're going to make that much money back on these games?
Maybe the goal is to just make sure that A, there's a chance one of them really blows up, but B, even if they don't, they're still getting the games out there. They're perpetuating the brand. They're moving toward the lifestyle, and it can support their other work.
It doesn't work that way. Not
Boy, fair enough.
No.
I don't know the business nearly as well as you do, Steven.
No. This is what I'm going to say. Let me caveat that. It doesn't work that way anymore. Like a few years ago, yes, and that's actually the problem with video game studios and movie studios, is they're always like 2 years behind the times because it takes them so long to make these properties. Is that whatever they're making has always been greenlit years ago, and whatever was hot a couple years ago is now, like, things are happening so fast now. So now everything is changing, and they're going back down to mid-level games and mid-level gaming and mid-level movies, because they just this whole we'll spend $300 million on the movie and make back $1 billion is just not happening like it used to, which is interesting because it's just 5 years ago this was happening on every movie. And 5 years ago sounds like forever, but it's actually not that long ago. I can't believe it. Endgame came out 5 years ago the last week. Do you know that? Is that 5 years? It wasn't 5 years ago. Endgame feels like yesterday. I was like,
it feels more recent to me, but that's because I didn't watch it in theaters. So when I actually watched it, was not a full 5 years ago.
But still, was that 5 years ago? I can't believe it.
Yeah, I think
it was.
Makes sense.
Came out in 2019.
Makes sense. It was 5 years ago to me. There's some things that feel closer to me than they actually are, but Endgame was not one of them.
Yeah.
But some of the things that are in a slightly earlier time that turn out to be like over 20 years ago, and I feel like they aren't over 20 years ago, that's what gets me sometimes.
Yeah. Anyhow, it's that they're trying to recreate Baldur's Gate 3 in a bottle.
Oh yeah, well, of course.
Yeah,
who wouldn't want to try to recreate that?
I know, but it's like, I mean, you and I were talking. It's so funny because I remember we were talking about Baldur's Gate 3 and how excited I was for it, and like no one seemed to know it was coming. Like no one. I'm like, do you know?
A lot of people were talking about it too.
What's that?
A lot of people were talking about it too. It had obviously not blown up nearly to the extent that it did afterwards. But
no. It It was a blip on the radar. People we know were talking about it.
Yeah,
but
people we know were talking about it.
But I'm talking
That's
about,
what I thought.
Yes.
You mean like the general public non-RPGers weren't talking about it. You're right.
Nobody was talking. Like, I mean, it was so off everyone's radar, and the game. But also, it's like Larian Studios. Everything they do is fantastic. You know, it's a combination of you need to do 100 things right to get another Baldur's Gate 3. And just spending money is only one of those 100 things. And that's the issue.
It is one of the 100 things.
We
know that they're at least doing that.
Yeah, but right, you're right. But a lot of these companies think that, oh, I spend that money, I can get rid of these other 50. There's 100 items. But if I spend enough money, we can get rid of 50 of these items, right? And the answer is no, not really. I mean, you basically need all of them. You need all of them, and you can't really cut corners. And I feel like,
I mean, it doesn't hurt that they're at least putting the money in rather than trying to cut corners on the funding.
Yeah, I guess we'll see.
We don't know. We'll need to see more tea leaves.
I want to see.
If we start
these
seeing
games,
bad signs, then we start seeing bad signs. But so far, we don't know. Maybe they are going to put all of those in. Maybe perhaps they're very invested in it and want to try to do all of those 100 things because they really, really want another Baldur's Gate 3. But you also have a very good chance of being right that maybe they don't do all of them. Maybe they think the money should be enough.
One of the best series to watch, there's a series called What Happened on YouTube. And I think that's a YouTube, What Happened. And let's see. I don't know if that's what it's actually called, but it's from no, it's not that. The name is, who is the name of the person who does this? Matt McMuscles. So Matt McMuscles is a YouTube creator, and he does What Happened, and he does these for video games, and he does this for movies. And his video game analysis is amazing because he will go through these games that should have been popular and go through details and explain what happened. And what's fascinating is that 9 times out of 10, it's always the studio not understanding what the developers are doing and them getting in the way. And one of the biggest reasons that Baldur's Gate 3 was so successful is because basically they, being Hasbro, let Larian do whatever the hell they wanted, and they just said, okay, you just kind of do it. And they did a little bit of input, but they really were very, very light-handed on this because they didn't have any money involved with this. They just had their IP, so they were just like consulting. So Larian did everything, and Larian made this huge hit. My concern is that, if they're spending $1 billion, you better believe that Hasbro is going to be involved in all the decision making. And any of those what happens, the number one reason these things fail is because of that. And it's like, okay, what they really need to do is say to a game studio, here you go, here's $250,000, here's the scope, we'll be here to help and answer questions, but you do what you do and we'll do what we do. But that never happens. It just never happens. It's going to be like, why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? Let's fix this. Let's fix that. But
it happened with Baldur's Gate.
What do you mean?
That it happened with Baldur's Gate 3. That they let them do it.
Oh,
right?
yeah, no, right. They let them do it, right. And it was successful. And that's my concern.
And you say it never happens, but it happened at least once. So
because it wasn't their money.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
That's my point. No, my point is they didn't put anything into it. So they basically just gave them a license and said, okay, you do what you do. And they said, cool. And they did. But now, because Hasbro's going to be putting in $250,000 into a game, they're going to make sure that they put their hands all over this damn thing. And I have a feeling it's not going to... It takes a lot to allow someone creative to do what they want to do. On the other hand, it can also fail because look at Lucasfilm. Because Lucasfilm, when he did his movies, Star Wars Episode 1, they gave him free reign and said, here's your money, just do whatever you want. And so, doesn't always succeed. I'm just saying that's one of the reasons these things succeed. Anyhow,
That makes sense.
I beat that though.
So let's move on to this Nerf topic because I'm pretty interested to hear why you came up with this topic.
All right, I'll move on to it. So then,
I'm very curious. You said it as if there was like a large precipitating incident, and so I wanna hear.
so I just said there's a lot going on in the Warhammer community, and they just changed. So they have these armies, okay, and you know how it works in Warhammer is that people buy minis. They spend thousands of dollars on their minis. They spend time and effort painting their minis and building their armies. So it's a huge dedication because it's like it's not just like it's like, okay, I'm gonna make a character and I'm gonna level this character up to 15th level, and this is my character. Or even worse, say it's like 12th level. You know, it's like far enough, but you really don't want to start over, but not far enough that you still want to, you know, keep it going to get to 20th level. And so these people spend all this time, all this money, all this energy on these characters, these armies, and then they get nerfed. And I'm reading about all these people getting their armies nerfed, and they're furious with, with the Warhammer universe, with the Games Workshop. And there was an article I read that was like, oh, I have my $5,000 army that is now worthless, something like that. And I was like, damn, that sucks. And I was then also thinking of how when I used to play World of Warcraft religiously, and I mean, I played a hunter, and the amount of hunter nerfs I can count on one digit. I don't even think it's one hand. I think it's like one digit. Like, it just never happened. Hunters were always good, but my friends weren't so lucky. And I would just hear, because every couple of months they would completely redo the classes, or every like year or so they completely redo the classes. You have to learn new rotations. You have to learn everything's new. And sometimes the classes would get totally nerfed, and sometimes they'd get really powerful. And it's the same thing. It's like if you dedicate all your time and effort to these classes and they get nerfed, like that messes up your whole enjoyment of the game. It's not just some, arbitrary thing, because in an MMO, you literally can't play the game a different way, okay? So in an MMO, if they change your character, you're stuck. You have to play it. If they get rid of a power or change your rotation, there's nothing you can do. And in Warhammer, if they get rid or change the rules and you want to go play competitively, which most people are doing, you can't just say, oh, by the way, I want to use the rule set from 4 years ago. Is that okay? And they're going to say, no, these are the rules. You got to use these rules. These are the standard rules. So they're also in trouble. So now with a TTRPG, it's a little different. So with a TTRPG, you can decide ahead of time, like, okay, we should be using 3.5, or I want to use 4th edition. So you can all agree ahead of time. Like in my game, we haven't been using remastered. We're just using, we're using Pathfinder 2nd edition original. I haven't really bothered with the remastered, and then none of my players have asked for it, and I haven't looked at it, and so I'm fine with it. But I am wondering if people who are not so used to this and expect to continuously use the new rule set, and WoTC has put themselves in a corner by saying, okay, it's not a new rule set, it's an update to the old rules, which is already, I'm like, oh, that's a warning sign, man. That's like, because already it's like, okay, that means there's going to be a remaster and classes are going to change, both good and bad. And it's going to happen. Like, there's
so you say both good and bad? I want you to make that clear. Do you mean good changes that are healthy for the game, or do you mean changes that make the class stronger?
Both.
As good?
Both. Okay. Like, no, it's going to be good
because
and bad.
Most people
overall
think that changes that make a class stronger are good changes, no matter what, and the changes that make it weaker are bad changes, no matter what. I want to be clear when we're talking about things, which one you mean. Buffs and nerfs versus something else.
I agree.
So your thesis is, sounds like, because of the fact that Warhammer nerfs or bans a lot of miniatures, and there's a competitive play where you just can't use it anymore, and MMOs make a lot of balance tweaks and nerfs to your characters, and you just can't use it anymore. Therefore, D&D will have a bunch of nerfs on the classes.
Well, they're going to have it no matter what. Yeah, they're going to have it no matter what, because if they're what they're doing is they are keeping the rules the same. Everything's still 5th edition, right?
The rules are more or less the same,
right?
And that's very clear looking at the updates,
right? More or
however,
less.
they're gonna make some adjustments.
Right.
That much is true.
Yes.
However, this is where I'm gonna possibly disagree with you on this. But it's in a way that actually agrees with your central premise. I think you're not gonna see very many nerfs. And some of the things you were picking at there are exactly why. Your character, your class, your ancestry, your species, those are something you identify with. Mm-hmm. In probably less so in Warhammer, but more so in an MMO if you're doing a role-playing server, and much more so in a tabletop RPG. That's not just a piece you play. That is you in some sense of the word. That is a part of you. And people get very, very personally upset and have very strong feelings. Sometimes that they can't identify why the feelings are so strong when something happens that feels like it's like kind of ruining that piece, ruining that character. And so it can be challenging to weaken or nerf something that's in a class. It's one reason why I suggest for playtests, and I mentioned this, I think, on Monday, to start on the lower end of power in the playtest so you can mostly be strengthening the things that need it in the final version. Because if you put out something that was too strong and disruptive for many tables, there are going to be some tables where it wasn't, and they're going to feel very upset about the nerf. So everything I've seen from WoTC up until this point, and by that I mean the sample changes they've shown, the surveys they've done, the responsiveness they've shown to the surveys, and how they've responded to the surveys is very revealing. That plus my experience as a game designer tells me I think it is very unlikely they will nerf very much. They're going to find a few proud nails. Banishment, right? Counterspell was constantly kind of ruining all spellcasty opponents, so they changed it in the current. One of the things I saw, they had changed it from like a caster level into a Constitution save. The Moon Druid, right? And some of the top clerics, some of those very top subclasses and options that even the players of the game are all like, yeah, we know there's something about those options. They would kind of have to be like, yeah, maybe they did need a little something. Even those they're going to be careful about. They've been making changes and carefully watching as people gave those changes thumbs ups or thumbs down in the survey. And if enough percentage of people didn't give it a thumbs up, they're going to reverse it. Probably even if they think that the change would make the game a little bit better in terms of the power level. That's because they've shown that they're very sensitive to the way that people are feeling. I mean, part of that might be because of the fact that corporate has at the same time been alienating people. And so therefore, people who are working on the game want to make sure to keep people invested, keep people with the game they feel comfortable with even more than usual, make sure that they don't feel alienated or isolated by the rules. And so decisions are being made based on the playtest surveys. And so I think playtest surveys are very rarely going to tell you that they're in favor of nerfs, unless it's something very proud now. It's hard to get them to do that. Because even people who want things to be nerfed, unless they're really busting the game, usually don't want them to be nerfed that much. They might lightly want them to be nerfed. And the people who want to keep them, whether it's because they like the exploit or it's powerful, it's a huge part of their build. And even if it wasn't powerful, they just don't like the nerf. Whatever the reason is, they tend to have strong opinions about it. So it's harder to get opinions to nerf something than to buff something in a survey. And they're basing a lot on surveys. Due to that and my own experience with changing things, with making new additions, with trying to keep people invested, my prediction is, other than things they have shown us they're going to be doing and asked about in advance, which we have seen some, which and generally tend to be proud nails, I don't think we're going to see a lot of surprise nerfs, or at least not things that are like initially intended to be a nerf. But you may see some surprise things that are a side nerf. Like, for example, I saw people talking about how the fact that high-level monsters might have purely energy attacks instead of doing physical attacks that have the magical, that count as magical weapons. is sort of like stealth bad for some barbarians who have can get like resistances and stuff to physical damage, but not to those energy types. But that's not because they nerfed the barbarian if it does the exact same thing. In fact, they buffed the barbarian in several ways, but that one feature of the barbarian maybe won't be doing as much as it did before because of a change somewhere else. So there could be knock-on effects that make something weaker. That's my prediction. And people feel free to come back to this video and comment once they release it. I'm totally wrong. And there's a huge slate of nerfs all across the classes, but I just don't think that's what we're going to see.
Okay. How about this? The vast majority of D&D players, would you agree, are casuals?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why D&D 5th edition has a huge player base, and that's built on the fact that, and I mean, you say casual, so we need to make sure that we have the definition straight, because my definition may be different than your definition, but I'm saying that it's someone who, has played it a few times, maybe even only played it once and never played it again. If you count the majority of people who have ever played D&D 5e, I think a lot of them fall in that bucket, and that makes it so successful that it can get players to give it that first try, to play a little bit, and not just people like you or me who are lifestyle gamers.
Okay, we're on the same. Okay, but what you and I have the same definition. I didn't know what else to call them. I just called them casuals.
I figured we did, but I like putting in definitions because also some people can
make sure
see
we're
the
all
idea
on the same
of
page.
casuals as being like an insult to players,
It's not an
or
insult at all.
saying that they don't understand the game or anything like that. That's not what I'm intending to say. I don't think that's what Steven is either.
Beginners, people new to the hobby, all those are the same terms.
Some of them might not even be beginners. They could have been people who have been vaguely in the hobby for 30 years, but they just don't play it that often.
Right.
They play it a little bit every few months. They gather their friends together and play.
My concern is that how will they take the nerfs, if there are nerfs and changes? Because people usually don't take change well, ever. And I find that
they take buff changes.
You're 100% right. But my point is, there's a lot of advantages of coming out with a new edition. And one of the biggest advantages of whenever you come out with a new edition is that you can make changes and start over. You can start fresh, right? And the big issue with these other games I'm talking about, it's like Warhammer, they do come out with a new edition every 3 years or so. I think it's 3 years. So every 3 years they come out with a new edition. You know it's going to be redone. And hopefully your minis can still, and your army will still be available. Yeah, it might not work, but you're buying into that. That's part of the ecosphere in a way. It's that, okay, you are buying into the fact that every 3 years the game is going to change the rules. If you're in World of Warcraft or an MMO, you also have to buy in, whether you want to or not, that as the game comes out with new expansions, that they will redo and change the balance of characters, which can really mess you up, especially if you're a hardcore raider, like I used to be. In that case, it was like every 0.001% change was like the end of the world. So now you have D&D, which is trying to do something that the only other person I've seen do pretty successfully was the Pathfinder Remastered. How do you feel? This is a two-part question. Part one, how do you feel now it's been a few months that the remaster has been accepted in the hobby and in the Pathfinder universe? And actually, chat can chime in too. And we'll get to the super chat in a second, Dire Den. Like, what do you think? I mean, you read the Reddits a lot more than I do. You're a little more tuned in than I am into people, what they think. I'm not even using the remaster rules directly. So what do you think? Have people like it? Do they not like it?
I think that people generally are vaguely positive towards it. It's not a big change other than they have to get through the adjustments. Each person might have like a couple things that I didn't really like that one, but that they mostly like it overall in general, but that also part of the strong acceptance comes from the fact that it's a fait accompli on Foundry, and part of it comes from the fact that everyone understands that Paizo had to do this because of the OGL. They didn't have a choice. It wasn't like they just decided to remaster it one day just for fun.
True. Fair enough.
Thirsty says, wait, someone mentioned Warhammer?
I was Thirsty in the chat?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, he's a huge Warhammer fan.
Oh, hey Thirsty. Hey Thirsty, you got to get on the show because I really want to go through Starfinder Second Edition with you. So get in touch with us whenever you're ready, because I know the big book's coming out for Gen Con, and I'm very excited.
It is super cool.
So
looking.
all of our dragons and Secret Dragons can now be space dragons. Look,
the Bionic Dragon is already ready for Starfinder. He is waiting for Starfinder.
Yes,
I
the
just
Space
see
Dragon.
him in his lab waiting for Starfinder.
Space dragons. I might actually have a picture. I might even get a picture. Oh, look, I messed up the video. Whenever I do my hand gestures, it makes the video move.
Oh, no.
I know, it's funny. It's because I can't turn it off. I keep turning it off. It keeps turning itself back on. I've turned it off 100 times. Let me turn this off again.
Someone in chat was saying Paizo could have taken more time and that it felt rushed. I don't think they had the luxury of taking more time, Einar, from chat, unfortunately, just because
it was rushed. I mean,
at the time it was, but it was an astounding accomplishment to do what they did in that rush of a time frame, because at the time that they needed to pull the trigger on saying that it was going to happen, it wasn't clear yet that WoTC was even going to put the Creative Commons in and that there's even going to be an escape valve. They needed to have a plan ready at the time when WoTC possibly coming in and just being like, yeah, you're done on the OGL was still an option. So there was no choice.
Yeah, there was no choice. So that was part one of my.
Okay, but can we hit the super chat?
Oh, yeah, do the super chat.
Because Dire Den said they studied the UAs for a series on their channel. No significant nerfs to classes. Paladin and Moon Druid did get some. Healing overall was buffed, while Conjure Spell was nerfed. And I agree with that. There are also some individual things that were changed. But I want to go back to your question before, Stephen. It was a very interesting one that I just want to cover before we move on, where you're like, will people be able to accept nerfs? Right, even the things that were proud nails.
Yeah.
And I want to give some evidence that people were at least able to accept some. So Counterspell is one of the few things in 5e that I think pretty much everyone more or less agrees is busted. That you just can counter someone very, very easily with a pretty high percentage chance using far fewer resources than they did necessarily to do the thing that you were countering, right? To the point that I remember seeing like a social media from like a designer from D&D that was like, I know some people are telling me my character could have just used Counterspell here, but like I just want to have fun, so I didn't use Counterspell. So I decided to look because before this show to see, because I was curious, how have people reacted to the fact that they said they're going to change Counterspell? Like, I'm not sure that the change to a Constitution save is actually the best way to fix it, but it definitely is a step in the right direction, right? So I've seen posts that people made right after that change that were like, is this nerf a buff to casters? Which was being replied to being saying like the hope is that much like Counterspell itself, the big outlier spells at a high level will be reined in a similar fashion to Counterspell. I'm looking at you, Force Cage. Other people upvoted it a lot in r/1D&D, said exactly this. We need more changes, read power reductions to the outlying spells that are must picks or can trivialize entire encounters just as much as low or never picked options need to be revised. And that whole thread was mostly agreeing with that. I also saw a great post on D&D Beyond that said that the UA7 Counterspell, they said it was bad but had good intentions. And they said it was great intentions, it helped fix certain things, but the problem was that by being a Constitution save, it means that all your spellcasters now have to worry about Constitution specifically to not be counterspelled. The same is true for monsters, the ones that you might think are the best spellcasters. If they have a low Constitution, would be hard to counterspell. And they mentioned a few other things that they thought that fix didn't cover, but they did agree that it should be fixed and fixed by being nerfed. And then multiple people responded saying that they think that the change was a market improvement but other changes, all of which were nerfs. So I think that shows that at least the terminally online people who are actually like writing about it, which as you said, Stephen, most people are not that into things. They're more casual. They may never see it. Maybe they'll never even update to 2024. They'll just keep playing the original game without knowing a new one was out. But the people who are paying a lot of attention have accepted that nerf, and that's a good sign. when people accept healthy nerfs of options that are out of bounds, sometimes that doesn't happen.
So what I was saying is that by saying this is still 5th edition, and it's like, I don't know. I'm very curious to see how they're going to position this, because is this 5th edition 2024? Are they going to have like, well, we have D&D 2014 and D&D 2024? Or are they just going to do what kind of Foundry did, which is force everyone to kind of use the remastered rules, whether they want to or not, since everyone, or not everyone, but people are using D&D Beyond, and the rule set in Foundry for D&D is going to be using 2024 rules, and I guarantee the rule sets for Roll20 and all these other places are going to use the new rules. So by forcing, it's one of those, and companies do this all the time. This is actually very popular in software development. It's like, oh, you can use any version you want, but all the tool sets and everything that supports it is using the latest version. But you can use any version you want, and then you're forced to upgrade no matter what, because nothing works with the old version. So by forcing every tool set and developer out there to use 2024, you end up using 2024, and the 2014 rules are going to go away anyhow. Like, are they going to confuse the users and confuse the market by saying it's the same program, it's the same game, but it's not? Does that make sense?
I think they won't, because people are used to updates. People are used to, for the example you yourself gave earlier on in the show, they're used to their World of Warcraft getting an update, and it's still World of Warcraft, but substantial things were changed to the mage or whatever, whoever got the adjustments. Like, from what you've told me, my experience when I was playing back at MIT for that class, and I played for 1 semester and got to level 60, the maximum at the time, and wrote the paper. From what you've told me, it's unrecognizable. The class, the mage class that I played, from the one that I played before. But would you say that World of Warcraft is not the same game?
It's a completely different game. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's completely different. They've redone the game. That's why there's literally 2 versions of the game. There's World of Warcraft Classic,
and there's the Classic.
Right? Yeah, because it's completely different.
But at what point did it ship of Theseus into a different game? Was it every update that they made, or was it only over the course of a long period of time? That's a very interesting one.
I actually know the answer.
People might argue about.
Where? I actually know the
answer. Where would you say that was it? That's the end. Now it's a different game.
Very simple. It actually happened because of not Fortnite, because of League of Legends. Because before League of Legends, remember how big your toolbar was in World of Warcraft?
Yeah.
Remember how many buttons you would have?
The toolbar changed a lot. That's one of the things I know
toolbar,
that changed.
I used to have, and I'm sure you did the same thing, I had like 3 toolbars on the bottom and like 2 on the side.
I had a ton of toolbars, and now there's only a few. So you're saying that's when it changed?
Yeah, it was basically League of Legends.
Before that, there were a lot of updates.
Yeah,
even when I was playing, they did major balance changes. It was still mostly similar, but they were major balance changes. They were just like Shadow Priests. You're now completely different in your power than you were before. Was one thing that happened while I was playing. I was not playing at Shadow Priest.
Right,
but that was not said to be like, oh, now this isn't even World of Warcraft anymore. People just got mad at what happened with their Shadow Priest or whatever, right? Like, people have been trained to be used to that. And because of that, because video games have taught certain lessons, there's some things about tabletop RPGs that people understand less than they did before. But this is one thing they'll understand more than they did before. And I'll give you an example of one they understand less. It used to be that you could run a play test for tabletop RPG and be like, this is early stuff. We might change everything. It could be completely different. And people would, oh yeah, okay. They would criticize it or they'd like it, but they would expect it was going to change a lot. But because so many video games train people that they're going to release something that's like nearly done as a early access open beta or whatever on Steam, now people think that tabletop RPG ones are like that too. And there's just so many people, I've seen them, who have been like, Mark or whatever designer has already decided this. There's no way they're going to change thing X. Whereas I was thinking, no, probably going to change thing X, because they get that idea, and it's not unreasonable based on their lived experiences with the video games that use similar terminology in a different way. So I think actually people are more willing to accept it now because of video games. That's my guess.
I actually disagree. I actually say people are more accepting of changes now because of iPhones, because of cell phones. So people are now very much aware of how software development and how updates work because of their cell phones. It's amazing how much like cell phone technology in like 10 years, just the ability, the methodology of, if you look back 15 years ago when people had smartphones, they didn't have smartphones, they had cell phones. But the advent of smartphones has now made everyone understand the software development cycle. Because when I used to do software development 15 years ago or even 10 years ago, and I would talk about a dev development and QA development and pushing changes and updates, and people were like, huh? And now I talk to clients and I'm like, they know exactly what I'm talking about. I don't need to explain nearly as much as I used to have to explain, but that's because people understand the development cycle and they accept changes and updates a lot more because they're used to it. It happens on their TVs, it happens on their Netflix, it happens on their computers, it happens on their phones, it happens in their cars, it happens on everything has updates now. So I think they'll be a little bit more accepting.
I think so. Yeah. I think you're right. It's not just MMOs, it's everything's got updates. Everything.
Yeah.
So that, I think that just supports what I was saying, that people do understand updates and they're not like, well, now that my Tesla got that update, it's not a Tesla. It's a different car. People have been taught to accept updates and that it's just the same thing, even though there are some adjustments and changes. So I think they will be able to accept that for D&D for the most part. Obviously, there are definitely going to be some differences depending on how much more changes that we haven't seen since the last Unearthed Arcanas.
So what about, though, so what's going on in World of Warcraft? Yeah, they all sound the same. At Warhammer is that there's some people are so upset with the changes that they're all leaving. And even in our chat, you see a lot of people going to one-page rules, which, by the way, Param works for. So actually, I know Param, and I know one-page rules pretty well. And the thing is that what's fascinating about World of Warcraft. Oh, I keep doing World of Warcraft. Warhammer. They sound so similar. Warhammer is that you are buying into the lore and the rules. And there's this almost unspoken rule. It's like, well, and a lot of these people who play hardcore have, mini printers and, print their own minis all the time. And it's like I could just print my own minis and play my own games, but because I like Warhammer and I like the universe and I like the rule set, I'm sticking with it, even though it's gargantuanly expensive. So they're probably even more sensitive to nerfs and rule changes than, say, D&D or Pathfinder or any TTRPG. However, you have a TTRPG like D&D, which it's different because you have a group dynamic, and yeah, you can play any version of D&D, but they have something that Warhammer doesn't really have, which is D&D is becoming more and more dependent on tool systems every single day. I'll give you an example. Okay, we come out in Roll for Combat, we come out with everything for Pathfinder, if possible. We come out with on Path Builder. So Path Builder is a free tool, or you can pay $5 that allows you to build your Pathfinder characters using a online tool generator. And let me tell you, 5 years ago, the thought of using an online tool generator was considered not even verboten. It was considered like sacrilege. Like I used to get.
I don't think so. A lot of people used Hero Lab, but there were some
I got
people.
Into fights.
There were some people who got angry, and they were like, I definitely saw some people whose claim was that if you use Hero Lab, you won't learn how your character actually comes together because you use the character builder.
Right.
You won't know how to play them.
No, I sort of.
I when I was a volunteer for Paizo before I worked at Paizo, I did a lot of GMing for organized play. I had got 5 stars in Pathfinder 1, which is like the most number of stars. And that means I rented a lot of different tables.
I had 1
and
star.
so I came across people who sometimes use Hero Lab a lot, or who sometimes are very snobby about using Hero Lab a lot. Yes. I know what you're talking about, but I can tell you that was a minority who got really snobby about it. And that was more than 5 years ago. That was over 10 years ago.
Well, we'll split the difference. Let's say 7 or 8.
There weren't a huge number of people who were using it either, to be clear.
Now,
right?
Yes,
now,
because Path Builder's free.
Now, because Path Builder's free or a very small price that you should definitely pay to get the full version and support Red Razor.
Yeah.
Now, Path Builder, like, everybody uses it.
Well,
compared to when I saw Hero Lab from before, everybody uses Path Builder. It's like, I would guess 90% or more of all Pathfinder 2 players use it.
No, everyone. To the point that I accidentally... So today, Were Creatures came out, and I accidentally forgot to update the Path Builder version to include Were Creatures, go from version 4 to version 5. I just made a mistake. And immediately, people were like, where's the new version? I'm like, okay, sorry, mistake. And I updated it right away. But I was like, wow. And Eldamon, by the way, because we didn't come out with Battlezoo Eldamon in Path Builder yet, because I'm literally working with Red Razor, and he added all this new functionality to Path Builder just for Eldamon, because Eldamon's so damn complex to implement without him so he redid it. He spent a month adding this whole new functionality that allows basically pets of any sort, but they're almost like secondary characters. And now Eldamon will be completely supported for any class, by the way, not just the Eldamon trainers or elemental avatars.
Red Razor is the GOAT.
Yeah, no, he's been great.
That's just true.
And he added all this functionality. And because, oh my God, if another day goes by with someone asking us where that Path Builder file is, I'm like going to kill someone. I'm like, we're working on it. I'm like, it's coming. It's like, the unfortunate, the good and the bad news was that I couldn't give it to Red Razor until the PDF was ready. And everyone else, by the way, because it's funny, because I see all these other things, like as soon as the PDF comes out, the Foundry is updated and D&D Beyond is updated, like everything is updated because they finished the PDF 6 months ago. Okay, I hate to break it to you, all these companies finished their PDFs 6 to 9 months ago, if not a year ago, and they sent it to these companies, so they had all this time to implement it. So when it comes out all at the same time. Us at Roll for Combat is I literally finish the PDF, and within hours I give it to everyone. So you get it as quickly as it's done. The downside is then you have to wait for everything else to catch up, which is including Foundry and sometimes Path Builder. So, that's the downside. My original point being is that because Pathfinder and MMOs... TTRPGs in general are now becoming more and more dependent on external tool sets, is that I guarantee in 5 to 10 years, people are going to say, oh, you could play D&D 1st or 2nd or 3rd or 4th edition or even 2014, but no one will. It's the same reason no one uses Windows 95 or Windows 3 or, Windows Vista. You could, but no one can because nothing supports it. There's no support tools for that. And because Foundry is now updated to Pathfinder, the newest version, and it's going to be updated to the newest version of D&D, D&D Beyond is going to be updated, Roll20 is going to be updated, Path Builder is going to be updated, the Archives of Nessus is being updated. Like, everything's being updated. So if all your support tools are updated to the latest versions, you're going to be stuck with the latest version, whether you like it or not, and you have to live.
That's pretty true.
No, but you have to live with the nerfs.
That's what happened to us when we still had some products that were coming down the pipeline that needed to not be remastered due to the fact that Paizo had not published everything yet in Orc that we would have needed to do it in Orc.
Mm-hmm.
we ran into that same issue where all of the support tools that we were using had already been converted over, and that definitely made things rougher and will continue to do so.
Yeah.
So I highly suspect that means people will be running more. They will basically have to homebrew back, like kind of hard code homebrew back to anything that they want that isn't from the update. But you know what, Steven, we're talking about someone who only plays it every few months, who's very casual about the game. Maybe when they come back and it's changed already in their support tools that they're using,
They won't even
maybe
know.
they won't remember.
Nope.
Maybe they'll just
They won't even
maybe
know.
like Counterspell was a Constitution save. I guess it was. And they'd be like, that sounds weird. I felt like it was something else. I thought I used to roll. No, maybe it's
it's the
Constitution
Mandela
save.
effect. They just like, oh, I guess that's the way it was.
That could be how some people react to it, right? Who don't play a lot. It's just like, oh, this feels a little odd, but okay. Well, and it might not affect them that much. Obviously, if you have something as big as like the monk buffs that monk desperately needed, that are coming in, people are going to probably notice that their monk has a lot of huge quality of life improvements.
Yeah.
But certain things they might not. And I think that's okay.
So, by the way, do like and subscribe, because we only have 69 likes and 251 people. So, thumbs up. You got thumbs, don't you? I love that. I love that meme. It's my favorite meme. And don't forget,
at least 50 people like it, Steven's going to make me post the Gold Dragon Great Worm update during the stream.
Okay. Well, we already have 50 likes.
Oh, why already post the Gold Dragon Great Worm update during the stream?
And we're still 7 hours left on Secret Dragons. So if you want Secret Dragons, now's the time. And there's huge discounts. I mean, it's actually hard to see because they're kind of little tiny. You had to do like a chart or anything.
No, they're really huge because the way that you did this, that I
$200.
I kind of appreciate the way you were able to work this out, because people kept asking. They were like, your product is gigantic, but I only want a portion of it. Can you find a way to split it up? And it's tough because when you split up books, the way that the pricing on things changes dramatically. But Steven, you were able to find a way where the combined discounted tiers are like on par with prices that you might have been able to get for like a consolidated book, while also allowing people the option, if they really only like the goofy misfit dragons, or they really just want the battle or the fairy or just one, they still can take a smaller percentage. And I think that's good, because I was worried that if we split it up, it would wind up being too much to get all of them. And I really like that the Kickstarter helps it to give you kind of have your cake and eat it too on that.
Yeah. Well, I did one book and then I did 4 books because 2 and 3 would have been insane. But
I remember we were trying to work out the permutations for 1, 2, 3, 4. It was too much. It was going to drive people out of control, but being able to find their tiers.
Well, people have been asking me if I want to get 2. So I'm like, just buy 1. And then you can do an add-on later, and we'll have deals. Like the way Backer Kit works after is like I have infinite space on Backer Kit, and Kickstarter you kind of have limited space. You can put all sorts
of deals in there, but on Kickstarter it starts getting really unwieldy. Yeah, and we have had feedback from people that we had too many tiers in some of the earlier Kickstarters, and that it confused them. I've even had that feedback from some people who, like, for a living, handle complicated things like that, complicated analysis of pages and other things, and we're like, I have to tell you that even though I do that, your Kickstarter was hard to get through, and I really wanted to back you. And so Steven took that into account, and he has a good number of tiers this time, and we'll get you covered in the Backer Kit.
Well, also because I would do like one big Kickstarter a year and have 3 products, but now although it's a hell of a lot more work, although we're getting better at it and faster, because 2 years ago I was like, oh my god, I'm not doing 3 Kickstarters for 3 products, let's just do 1 for 3, because I don't want to do this 3 times.
Now we know that was a mistake.
Not that hard. Once you get, it's actually we have it down. We're like, it takes me so funny. It took me a month to set up the first Kickstarter. I can do it in a day now. It's like I literally just like
to be fair,
through it.
You have hired people that you didn't have back then.
Yeah. I did hire someone.
You have to count that guy's time too.
I completely count his guy's time, but
so counting his time, you can do everything in a day.
Yes, then
you can count
I can do it within a day, and then he does the graphics. But the graphics, I also was having that outsourced just to a different company. So
There you go.
So I
Fair
just
enough.
changed the way I did the graphics for the very first Kickstarter,
Yeah,
and then the second
that's why it took a
one
month.
I outsourced. Also, I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and now I outsourced it to a different person. And I work before it was a company for the second one, and then and the third one, but now whatever. So we did have a question: which is Mark's favorite, and which is Steven's favorite
Of the
dragon?
secret
We've
dragon.
actually
So
had-
Steven,
we've
you said
answered
your
that
favorite
one.
was the mischief, right? The gremlin one.
Well,
But see, I think your real favorite is the wellspring dragon because it's completely random.
I kind of like so I like the red mage, and I love the random tables. So the wellspring is pretty awesome, but I do like mischief. I would probably combine the two, but that's what I would do.
It's a hybrid dragon that has both,
well, I like
the
that.
powers of all the dragons
Let me
combined.
tell you, having random tables, okay, having randomness in a TTRPG, 99 times out of 10 always ends. It might not end in a good way, but it sure ends in a fun way. I'll leave it at that. It's always fun because it goes in directions no one expects, and it makes memories that people remember for a long time. And I was watching a YouTube thing on why failure, like it was basically why do you remember the games you don't finish, but you don't remember the games you do finish? And it was fascinating of how your brain works, of like how memories are formed. And I was like, wow,
I guess is it
right.
because you finished it, so you just checked it off
Yes,
and sorted
that's
it away?
Yes, it gets
Or
sorted
the
in
one
your
you
brain.
didn't finish,
It gets like put in the
like,
closet of your brain, and it's just
I'm
out
gonna
of sight, out
never
of memory.
forget for my entire life the way that Xenogears for the PlayStation handles its final dungeon, where you can go to a save point that is past the place where you can do random encounters to level up or to get resources.
Right.
And you can be faced with the final boss with a setup where you're not ready for the final boss, and your options are to exit the entire final dungeon, which will require like dozens of hours to re-navigate potentially, or lose. And that's what happened to me when I was playing it back then, because I had put a lot of resources on a character that permanently left the party with all of those resources. And so what was left in my party was not sufficient. And I'll never forget that. So you're right. It's a thing that never closes. Where some of the games I beat back then, and maybe I won't remember.
It comes down to when you finish something, you check it off. It goes into like a part of your memory. It's like done. But if you don't finish something, you basically bookmark it and keep that bookmark in your memory. So you're always like, oh yeah, I have to finish this, and you remember it. And it's sort of just the way your memories work. There was a reason I was bringing this up. Why was I bringing this up? What were we talking about? We
were talking about favorite dragons.
I know. Oh well.
That's what we were talking about, and how you love wild mages, and you kind of
you
often bounce around from one thing to the next.
Yes. So the point is that uncertainty does the same thing in your brain, because when you are playing a game and things go in directions you don't expect, it will make more permanent memories, which is also why things like the horror in a Pixar movie works so well, because it's changing genre on you, and your brain is like in a lane, and then it gets shifted to a different lane, and then it forms a memory because the way your brain is working. It sort of gets out of its protocol, and sort of it's like, its way of thinking. So it's the same thing. If you have random encounters, or not random encounters, but you have random activities or randomness happening in your game, it's like, think about how many combats you have, and can you remember all of them? Probably not even most of them, because they're all rote after a while. But you'll remember the combat where, I was playing, and all of a sudden, a dragon came out of the sky and entered and started to like beat up the bad guys, and we're like, what the heck is going on? Like you always remember those because it breaks the pattern. So that's all it was.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And for mine, the way I work on things as a designer is I try to fall in love with whatever I'm working on right then, so that I can do the best work on that. And I'm at the beginning of getting started with the fairy dragon. So it's going to be the alphabetically first fairy dragons, like the alicorn and the allure dragons. I'm going to like whichever one I'm working on right then, because I try to convince myself of all the positive aspects of that thing. get excited about it. And that's, I think, how you can put out the best work for each individual thing is by getting excited. If you can, psych yourself up about whatever you're doing right then. I think there was another question for us that asked, how hyped are we for Starfinder 2E? From Zolgathar.
I know a lot about it, so pretty hyped.
Why?
Well, I mean, it's going to change a lot. I think it's going to change the dynamic. So GURPS did it before anyone, and it's not a new concept of where you basically have one game system for multiple genres. But GURPS, although GURPS was around so long, they tried to like make it work on everything known to mankind, like everything, so I think it was like too much after a while. But this is fascinating because suddenly D&D, Pathfinder and Starfinder, because they use the same rules, everything's compatible. Like, you can just use everything. I'm like, yeah, everything in Starfinder can be used in Pathfinder and vice versa. So someone said, are we going to have a Starfinder Dragons book? Here's the thing. We don't really need to, because it's going to be the same rule set. So I don't know if we even have to. You can just use the Battlezoo Dragons in Starfinder, because it still has the 3 actions. It's still the same system. It's the same game. So it'll just work, as far as I know. Am I wrong?
Yeah. I mean, the games are stated to be basically interchangeable, where you can use one thing from one in the other, except for that Starfinder 2E has a different meta that's more like focused on ranged and 3D combat that goes like vertically up and down, right?
Yeah.
So if anything, all you would have to do is like make it easier to move vertically or do range stuff. Like, if you see that Starfinder 2E ancestries have universally easier flight, then move dragons, flight to wherever that is, and then you're done. Right? Like, that's seems like about the only changes that would happen just for the meta. And it's not like it wouldn't work with the way it is right now. It's just that it wouldn't be as good at doing that meta as the other Starfinder rules. So you might find yourself using a jetpack or something that isn't an ancestry feat to get flying, because it's easier in Starfinder if you made no changes. So yeah, but the long answer is yes. But of course, even two systems that work together that have different metas, you may need to make adjustment for the meta.
Well, and someone said they're worried that it's too good to be true. I think you're all going to be very happy. As someone who's seen more some of the Starfinder playtest stuff and knows what's going on, I think you're going to be very, very happy. It's not too good to be true. It's quite frankly the opposite. It's like the games are very similar. They already were similar even before then. Like, because Starfinder was based on 3.5-ish, 3.75, whatever you want to call it. And the system works so well that you're just reskinning it. And I'm kind of surprised it took them this long to do it. But it's exactly the same.
I mean, it takes a lot of resources. Starfinder itself was not that old of a system. It's about the right time for it. So it's around when I would have expected it to happen.
Yeah.
But it is a great idea. It's going to be awesome. And I'm really looking forward to it.
Ah, yeah, I love it. But, the only thing that might happen maybe is that you come out with, I don't even think that's going to happen. I was going to say maybe there's some, well, that could happen. Like if you do have like ancestries, like maybe you have a human ancestry and you'll have the human ancestry will have specific things for, say, androids that obviously are Pathfinder, not in Pathfinder.
But androids are their own ancestry.
Yeah, their own ancestry.
I see what you're saying. There could be like feats that are for the Starfinder meta that don't work in the Pathfinder meta as well. I think that's true.
Yeah, that's what I was
Here's what I think. This is my guess. My guess is anything that you want to take from Pathfinder more or less probably will just work fine in Starfinder, but maybe if it's involving around 3D combat or ranged stuff, maybe it'll be a little weak. But fine. Are you
looking
forward? Some of the things in Starfinder that go towards their meta are going to be too strong in Pathfinder without a little adjustment, unless your Pathfinder meta has already changed to the Starfinder meta before you added the Starfinder content. That's probably so. But again, it'll probably just be flying, 3D movement, and ranged. So if you consider the fact that you're definitely buffing those, you can make other Starfinder adjustments to it, or you can maybe restrict that a little bit and bring it in your Pathfinder. So I think you could probably bring your Pathfinder. This is a guess. I don't have inside information, just the public playtest that they put out. My guess is it'll be super easy to bring Pathfinder to Starfinder. If anything, there'll be a few things you wouldn't want to use, but that some of the Starfinder will be more powerful than similar things in Pathfinder because the meta is different, and that's the direction the meta moves.
By the way, are you looking forward to having Vesk and Skinamanders in your Pathfinder games?
Well, Steven, I mean, I'm probably not going to have them in my Pathfinder games because of the fact that my people are big lore people, and they know that in the timeline of Pathfinder, Vesk and Skinamanders hadn't been around yet. But I am very excited for groups that are going to put Vesk and Skinamanders in because those are amazing ancestries and they're super fun.
How about operatives? Are you looking forward to having an operative in your Pathfinder game?
I mean, as the author of the original operative class, that could be cool.
Oh, really? Which ones did you do? You did who did Solarian?
Mystic and operative.
Oh, you
classes.
did Mystic? I was about to say Mystic too, yeah.
Yes, those were the ones that I wrote. But we all worked together. I wrote different pieces of other ones. Other people helped me with those two classes too, but those were my two that I started with in the original, and so that'll be cool. Like I'm a little more focused right now on it when people bring in lots of new stuff, on having them bring in some of the stuff that we're working on to play test it. But I'm also really excited about the Starfinder content.
Someone actually asked a good question: do you think the assumption that people need tools like Path Builder and Foundry integration for content affects the design of said content?
I would say that it does, in so much as it, at the very least, the fact that it was needed and that those tools have, especially Foundry, have pushed off the ability to do OGL, has changed Steven's opinion when I asked him on what we were going to do in terms of OGL and org products, much more towards that we have to find a way to do everything that we can in orc than it was earlier when he had been saying, well, we could do some that are OGL if we want to use the OGL things, because just the state of how things work with Foundry wasn't clear at that time. So I would say it at least changes what you can work with, because so many people assume that it's gotta work on those tools and only the remaster stuff will for Pathfinder.
The answer is yes. It's simple. It's literally yes, because
that was my more complicated.
Your more complicated answer, but the answer is 100% yes, because at this point, and this actually it turns into an issue, is like if we couldn't get the Eldamon into Path Builder, I mean, I don't think it would have been the end of the world, but it would have been tricky, and luckily we were able to. And we're getting Eldamon into Foundry, which is luckily can be done, but it's also pretty tricky. We're actually,
it's especially tricky, but we have the Ians and the non-Ians at this point, and we're going to get it done.
Well, we figured out how to do it. What we did is, and why it's taking so long, is that we do it like professional software development, is that they're actually writing tools. So this isn't done by hand. And what we do is we actually have tool sets that will import our PDFs into Foundry. And so that way they're as accurate as possible. And then we go and clean them up a little. So it takes a while to write those tool sets and test them. But in the long run, if we expect to do a lot more Eldamon, which we do, that you will be able to do that. In fact, I did the same thing for the RPG Superstar site. I wrote a tool set that it takes my RPG Superstar and it takes your entries, and I export it and it goes right into InDesign. So whatever's on the website is actually in the InDesign. I don't need to reprogram it or put it in by hand. It's automated. So anyhow, because I'm a geek, but that's the right way to do it. But it takes a while to do it the right way. But if you expect to do it more than a couple times, you should spend the time and effort. So that's why it's taken a while. Let's see. I got another question. Ian, as an Ian, I approve. Do you think that WoTC is going to lock down the new D&D 1 like they're trying to do with the 5e OGL?
That's a good question.
I don't know.
They could do it because of the fact that it's not exactly the same edition, but I don't think they will. Because I think they've realized how bad it was for their PR, and I think they've realized that they don't have to. Look at some of the signs of what they've been doing. They've been bringing other people on to D&D Beyond. They didn't have to do that. With what we've all been hearing were good deals to go on to it that people wanted to take. That's the opposite of what they were doing before, where they were using the stick with certain third-party creators, where they were going to come and take a decent percentage of off the gross earnings. And so just the way that attitude has changed leads me to believe that they have discovered what Steven had even just said many times, even before it happened. Even it was part of why Steven thought the OGL crisis wouldn't happen, is that the carrot is more effective than the stick, and I think they're going to go with the carrot for this.
It's called kicking and screaming to the money tree is the technical term.
That is a really interesting and evocative way to describe it. But,
it's true. It's true. It's like, no, I don't want that kicking and screaming to the money tree. I don't want this. I don't want all that money. I'm like, why do you fight it? Because they want control. It's like they have to give up control to get money, but somehow they think control equals money. But I'm like, yes, but which do you want more? And that usually it's money. No, that's a real term. It's a real term, and it's like a good advantage was that. Do you remember? No one remembers this because it was so long ago. Remember the DVD wars? There actually used to be different types of DVDs. Remember there was like multiple brands of DVDs, and they were all fighting over who was going to win the DVDs, and that was a big issue because movies, they didn't want to come out on DVD. Like, remember movies used to cost, when they were on VHS tape, Blockbuster Video used to have to spend $100 per movie because movie studios did not want anyone to buy their movies at all. And so they would charge $100, and that's in the 80s. So that's like $300 today per VHS. So Blockbuster would buy up, hundreds of these, spending thousands, and then obviously rent them. And that actually went to the Supreme Court, whether or not you're allowed to do that, whether like, hey, wait a second, you're buying it from us for $100 and then renting it out for $3 at a pop. And then they would resell them. Remember that Blockbuster used to resell, like after they bought, say, I don't know, like Titanic, and then Titanic came and went, and then they bought like 1,000 copies of Titanic, and then once it, wasn't so hot anymore, they would sell off 900 copies of Titanic at like, $10 a pop, even though they were heavily used. So yeah, they would do that. My point is that all they needed to do was open up D&D instead of closing it off and have some control, not all the control, but some control. And now they're making money off their competitors. So, but I don't know. I actually don't know. I can see it go either way. I'm very, very, very curious to start seeing the books.
I'm just going to say, I think they won't. There's another thing. People can come back and comment on the video if they did and be like, Mark, you optimist, what are you doing?
Change to the D&D Beyond market happened last night. Makes me, what happened? I didn't even see that.
Oh, yeah, I didn't see something last night that happened to the D&D Beyond market.
Mm-hmm.
I would have talked
I heard
it.
about this, actually. I did hear.
What was it?
That you can no longer buy things individually, that you have to... Is that what you're talking about? Is that you have to buy them in groups? You can't buy individual items on D&D Beyond anymore? Yeah, D&D Beyond stops a la carte purchases in shop redesign. You have to buy the whole book. So in the past, you used to be able to buy pieces of books, but now you have to buy all of the book, which kind of makes sense because...
I mean, a lot of other companies already made you buy the whole book.
Yeah. And you know what? As someone who has to deal with this, because I come out with Year of Monsters, and Year of Monsters is you get 12 or 13 ancestries all at once. And people have asked me 100 times, to say, oh, can I just buy one? And the answer is no, because it's very, very hard to break them out a la carte. For I won't get into it. There's a lot of reasons, and it's like, no, it's really hard.
I think one of the big ones that helped me understand when I was asking Steven about this is that the keys for virtual tabletop have a several dollar expense or something like that. That doesn't matter if you have a gigantic book, because it's like, okay, whatever, it's just several dollars. Yes. But if you split it into 13 tiny books that are only a few pages long and it's only not that many dollars each, keys. Then suddenly the key is eating up a massive percentage of the cost of it. Plus, or you have to raise the price of it, so it's like people are, why the heck is this so expensive?
Not only that, supporting it is really hard, because now you have to support multiple products. So I have to support, like, if I have every class broken out, I have to, and if it's in 3 products, I have to support that class in 3 products. So if the class changes, and that's like a total nightmare.
I see what you're saying. A version control nightmare.
Oh yeah, version controls, and there's a lot of reasons. So, and also D&D Beyond, the way they're doing it is that they're allowing third-party publishers to come on, and third-party publishers are not going to allow you to break out their books. They're just not going to. There's a lot, they just won't, and it's a big nightmare. It's just easier.
Honestly, that was a nice thing that WoTC used to do that a lot of people didn't do.
No, and
we call them out when there are things that they do that aren't nice for consumers. So I should call out, that was a nice, good for consumers thing that players would probably be really happy to be able to buy just that one subclass they needed. And that was a nice thing that they once did that they're now not doing. But that they didn't have to, and that some companies, almost no companies do, except for they did.
I'm kind of surprised they... in fact, I don't know. I was kind of surprised they did it in the first place, because I thought it was like, I guess it makes sense, but I was like, oh, seems like a nightmare bookkeeping to me. So, but I actually had one more thing.
Okay, what do you got?
Are you excited about Vecna Eve of Ruin? So I will say, D&D
it looks cool.
and WoTC have been doing a very good job of putting out videos almost every day or every other day. 95% of them have Amanda on. Which, are you friendly with Amanda? I mean, I know you know her and you were friendly with her.
Like, I mean, I talked to her a lot when she was at Paizo. I haven't talked to a lot of the people from back at Paizo as much recently, but Amanda's awesome. And so Amanda's awesome. She worked on Vecna Eve of Ruin. It looks cool.
No, I know. She's on like every channel. Which is funny. No, I talk to her a lot. I only see her at conventions, but she goes to like every convention, and I talk to her a lot at the conventions. So it's just funny whenever I see her there. And I'm just like, I'm so tempted to write her an email and like ask her some questions. It's one thing about D&D that I still really love. I love the lore. Like the lore of D&D, because A, I grew up with it, and it was like part of my childhood, and B, I also just think it's freaking cool. So, but it keeps happening because I keep getting excited for these books, and then they keep disappointing me. So I'm like, the Vecna, I'm like, okay.
Vecna one looks cool.
It looks damn good, and they got the Rod of 7 Parts. I mean, it's such a cool... If they do it right, the Rod of 7 Parts, because I use that... The Rod of 7 Parts is an Age of Worms, and the way the rod works is that it's that one piece of the rod can, if you have like if you have, I think, was it piece 6, then the 7th piece, so if someone has the 7th piece and someone has the 6th piece, one piece knows where the other one is. And there's actually a part in the game where the PCs get like the 6th part of the Rod of 7 Parts, and a demon lord has the 7th piece, so they sends his minions after the PCs to steal it, and they have to fight demons like from a demon lord, like a really high level demon lord, and they then realize that they're going to be defending against demons for the rest of this adventure, so they go to Tensor. I mean, that's how freaking cool. This adventure is amazing. They go to Tensor, who decides to take it off their hands. And he's not going to keep it, but he'll guard it for them while he goes on a mission for them. He's like, does a trade. He's like, I'll tell you what. I'll hold on to your rod. which sounds a little dirty, but it's not. I'll hold on to your rod if you go do this little errand for me. And it's just so freaking cool. It's just like, God, the lore of D&D is excellent. And so I'm very excited. I'm very excited about this book, and I keep watching all the videos and reading about it. And the funny thing is, I know this book has been done forever because at last Gen Con, Amanda was telling me about the book. So it's like the book has been done for a year.
I mean, it looks great. I'm looking forward to seeing if it's going to be awesome. As you know, I mentioned before that the Die Vecna Die, not that popular old Vecna adventure that a lot of people didn't like at the time, I thought was a really cool adventure.
I have it. I gotta put it out. It's the problem with Die Vecna Die.
What is the problem with Die Vecna Die?
The layout is so dense. Like that is the old.
It is dense. They put so much into Die Vecna Die.
It's so dense. It's like reading a block. It's like reading a newspaper. It is just like blocks, like huge blocks of dense, very small font text, page after page after page.
And it's basically an entire campaign that they crammed into a tiny amount of space. It was extremely ambitious.
Yeah, but you know what? That's why design matters, because of that, it's physically hard to read. It's physically hard to actually comprehend because of the design. And I get it. They basically had however many words that is. It's like 200,000 words that had to fit into whatever it is, like a 96-page book. And they're like, got to go with the really small fonts. Like I'm like, gotta squeeze this in there. And they did. And you read it, and it's just like, it's painful. It's painful to read, but damn, that thing is packed.
I'm someone who doesn't even like Vecna that much as a character. Vecna's hand and eye were interesting as items. I didn't really like Vecna as a character as much as some people do, which cool. A lot of people like him a lot. I still think Die Vecna Die was great. And I think this Vecna adventure is looking good too. I'm excited. So if you can get someone who's not Vecna's biggest fan as a character to like your Vecna adventure, I think that means it's probably going to be a good Vecna adventure, but it'll depend on what is actually in the adventure in the end.
Am I being nice to wizards? No. And look, I grew up with D&D. I grew up playing D&D on a weekly basis, and I love City of Greyhawk. I like Tensor. I mean, the guy keeps clones on the moon as backups. Come on, man. How cool is that? I mean, it's just freaking cool.
Listen to Steven talk about the D&D movie, which he loves. If Steven likes something, he's going to say that he likes it.
I love that movie.
Steven loves a lot of things about D&D, just maybe not some of the decisions that some of the executives made back during the OGL crisis.
Well, also, you have to remember that we play on, I wouldn't even call it the hard mode. I mean, we play on like legendary mode. Like we play really, really tough, and my guys like it that way. They like to play really, really hard adventures, and which is one of the reasons they like Pathfinder so much, because one of the complaints, Mark, of Pathfinder 2nd Edition is that it's too damn hard. I think that's lessened over the years, but it is hard, especially if you don't know what you're doing and you don't build. So if you build sub-optimized characters, they will die very quickly. But my point is they like it, and the problem with with D&D 5th edition is that it's like it's not defaulted to be very hard. It's defaulted to be actually pretty easy. And that's fine. But that's not what me and my friends like to play. And if you want to see a hard game, play 1st edition D&D. Boy, is that game hard. That game isn't even hard. It's not even unfair. It's like, it's unbalanced, unfair, broken in 100 different ways. And that is what we cut our teeth on. So that's what we like. It just is, I don't know. I don't know what to say. I like what I like. What do you like, Mark?
What do you mean? What do I like?
Do you like your games hard? You like them easy? You like a medium? Do you like a challenge?
Well, I would say that I usually like games that are difficult. but that I can use, but that not just difficult because it's just like, oh, this is just oppressively hard and that's it, but difficult in a way that I can use my tactics and my know-how in order to still have a pretty good chance of pulling it off if I do things right. So something like I often play a lot of games on the highest difficulty mode, but before I do, I go to investigate. Is this the highest difficulty mode because it's just like oppressively difficult no matter what you do, or is it one that you have to play and think hard about what you're doing to get to win on that difficulty mode? And because sometimes games on high difficulty modes aren't balanced well at certain points. It's often the beginning of the game when you only don't have your full party and you don't have all the options to customize that you'll have later on in the game, especially for like a video game that has difficulty modes. And so there's sometimes where it's like, darn, this first boss is basically impossible without redoing it hundreds of times in the hardest difficulty mode, but I might have liked the hardest difficulty mode for most of the rest of the game, and I'll have to play the second hardest. So I usually play things that are, I would say, significantly harder than Pathfinder's second edition. But when you're playing a tabletop game with a whole group of friends and you all have your own different skill levels, I wouldn't want to play a game that was as hard as I play alone, right? Because I would feel bad about that, since I want to let other players do what they want to do and not be like, hey, wait, don't do that. It's bad tactics, which you would kind of have to do if you're playing something on as hard of a mode as I usually enjoy for solo games.
So you are hardcore all the way. I go
with solo games, but with a team game, I like to play something that meets in the median of what the rest of the people I'm playing with want to play. As long as it's not too easy so that nobody is really doing anything but pressing the I win button.
Ugh, yeah, I win button. It's like my biggest pet peeve of. Ugh, I won't get into that. it's so much. So yeah. Let's see. Someone had another question. A lot of questions today. I was looking at the Vecna book and saw it has the old style black and white type of maps. Do you think it's time to start using? No, it's not. The old style type of maps is only for using, I think, maps. So if you're using D&D Beyond maps, they use the old style black and white maps, but I believe they're full color in Eye of Vecna, and they're using full color maps. So if you use maps, I know this is confusing, the online tool in D&D Beyond called maps, those maps are old school black and white. If you're using D&D Beyond and you're using Eye of Vecna actual maps, which I'm guarantee our guy made, they're full color. So I don't think that's, there's no way they're using black and white maps in that thing. I promise you that, because the maps are all in the book, and there's no way they're gonna put black and white maps in a book like that. So there's no way. But maps, the actual program, seems to have most, if not all, their maps in that 2D black and white style, where it's kind of a very old school look to them. I think that's just the way they do it. So there you go. Didn't Monopoly, the I win button, save D&D? Ugh, Monopoly Go. You got to download that thing, Mark. You got to try it. It is the stupidest game. It's not even a game. There's no decisions.
I've understood what you said. That is enough for me. I definitely do not want any metadata on anything I own to say that they should advertise to me something similar to that.
I actually, well, I'm
not going to download it.
I go the opposite route. I go the... You and I are both the opposite route. So let's do a search of Mark Seifter on the internet, shall we? How often do you come up? Mark Seifter comes up 289,000 times. I told you they did a thing in class where they looked up each of their parents, and I won. I come up 338,000 times. So we are so much on the internet that it's hard to find us because we're too much on the internet. It actually, we kind of do the fire hose approach. So if you have so much stuff that it all kind of turns into gray goo. It's funny, I don't get any marketing even though I have Monopoly Go on my phone, but thank God.
Linda said she's gotten ads for Monopoly Go even though she doesn't have it.
I've never gotten one. What's Linda playing? She's getting ads from Monopoly Go.
He gets ads for everything.
Oh, really? Well, I also have a lot of things. I also
I get more spam phone calls for some reason.
Oh, I get
including
tons.
some people
Yeah,
who've been texting me from like political campaigns with my dad's first name, which is very unusual.
Oh, I get tons of that. That's standard though. Well, you know what I get?
How do they even have my dad's first name and my phone number?
You don't want to know.
Yeah, I don't. So I'm just gonna see no evil. I'm gonna hear no evil.
Oh, here we go. Someone said 289,000 search results and none for Arcane Mark. That's your own fault, Mark. You gotta put some more search results in there for Arcane Mark.
How?
How? Simple. You gotta put your name, like make a bio page and put. Although you do that already. You put Arcane Mark in everything. So I don't know, man.
And my I put it in bios for anything I do. I talk about Arcane Mark and I put my name in the Arcane Mark. There is a about us, so like
that's true. No, you do that all the time.
Yep.
I don't know, man. I don't know. Arcane Mark. Well,
there you go.
How's Arcane Mark going? I never see it because now I used to watch it all the time. It was easier to watch when you're on at 10, but now you're on at 8, and I'm always busy when it's on. I've not watched your.
Wait, we've always been on at 1 Eastern on Saturday and 8 Eastern on Tuesday. That's been our time since
when you
the
lived on the
beginning.
East Coast and the West Coast.
Yeah, no, we moved from 10 a.m. Pacific to 1 p.m. Eastern, which is the same time.
Oh, okay. Well, I haven't watched in a while.
So we moved it, but not really. But you are right
sorry.
that we did say we changed that. We said it was from 10 Pacific to 1 Eastern to be our own time zone, even though it actually didn't change. But so how's it going? I mean, it's going like about the same as it ever has, I guess, in terms of Arcane Mark. I usually have a thing up here for it, but
maybe you should do Arcane Mark in the Roll for Combat channel. Mm-hmm.
What?
If you did it here, you'd probably get a lot more viewers.
If I did what?
Arcane Mark.
I mean, but it is a different channel.
True, but right? You can still do it. Why don't you do it once, just to see? Maybe do it once.
We could do a crossover episode if you want.
Well, it's up to you. I'm trying to help you out. I just thought it might be nice because then you'll get all the auto subscribers to come on, and then you could at least introduce them to the channel, and then maybe you do. No, I'm saying you do it every 2 days a week. I'm just saying maybe once in a while, and you do like a crossover, and that way you can get people to come over to Arcane Mark. I'm trying to help you out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to give it a try.
Okay. I'm just trying to help. Just trying to help a bloke out.
So basically, where we are right now, let me look at it. So on Arcane Mark channel, we are we have 670 subscribers for the Arcane Mark channel, and which is Arcane Mark. It's at Arcane Mark 2562 on YouTube. For anyone who's like, what is this Arcane Mark? There's a lot of things called Arcane Mark. Like, what YouTube is this? It is this. And so in terms of views, we are not yet enough to be like considered actual people by YouTube.
Yeah.
Let me see.
Yeah,
I don't think we're like within a factor of 2 of that. If we doubled our number of minutes of view over the past year, we would be considered to be allowed to like do our live streams there and have cheers and things like that. Which, if that happens, Linda and I are considering doing that because Twitch does a really bad job of directing anybody to our live streams compared to YouTube, I think.
Yeah, well, YouTube's way better. I mean, well, what ended up happening is like first they were just not Discord. The other streaming channels were doing a really, really good job for their video game streaming, but then YouTube came around, and that's sort of the end of that. So
yeah, that makes sense.
That's
so here's the analytics for you, Steven. In the month of March, actually, let's do April because that is the month that just happened. In the month of April, there were 827 views on Arcane Mark and 131 watch hours with 7 new subscribers.
All right. There you go.
So there you go.
Yeah, I don't know. We like to talk about the business topics. I don't know if we can talk about. I mean, I went through a little bit of mixture of everything here. I don't like doing just like, oh, here's the 5 ways to improve your fighter. You know, I mean, I know you do a little bit more of that on your channel, but I don't like to do that here. It just, first, I don't feel like I know enough sometimes to talk about that, especially for some of the specific classes, because I don't really.
Yeah, you don't dig into as much of the details
No.
of how they were nerfing Counterspell and some of the other things that I've been talking about here.
No, I don't. It's
What
not
were you
that-
going to do if I didn't bring those nerfs
It
to
didn't
this
matter.
topic?
Because it's all about concept. It's all about how because I was really looking at it through the lens of video games and Warhammer, and how people reacted to nerfing in those communities and how it would affect the D&D community, but because D&D is sort of becoming this weird. So to sum up, you have Pathfinder, Warhammer, which is basically almost there's online tools, but Warhammer is still very much traditional, that you have minis and you have paper and you sit down and you fight your armies, and the rules are whatever you both agree on. And then you have an MMO like World of Warcraft, which is completely online, and whatever is online is the rules you have to use, whether you want to or not, because they run it and they're in charge. And now you have D&D and Pathfinder, where they're kind of in this weird hybrid, which is, sure, you could use the pen and paper rules of any version you want, but all the online tools, which a lot of people now use, are all digital and makes the game a lot easier to use, and they're all updated to the latest version. So it's kind of a hybrid between World of Warcraft and Warhammer. So how is it going to work when people don't like the nerfs, but because there's so many digital tools, they're stuck with them, and they really don't have an option anymore, and it's going to get harder and harder, and in 5-10 years it probably won't even be an option. I say in 5 or 10 years you will go to gaming conventions, and sure enough, of course, at Gen Con, you'll see a couple of people, you'll see the occasional 1st and 2nd and 3rd and 4th edition D&D games being played, but out of the 200,000 sessions that are at Gen Con every year, there will be like 5 of those total. There'll be just a very small handful, and it'll just decrease because it'll be a lost art. It'll be hard to find that content, and everyone is going to be so dependent on their damn electronic tools that it's just not even going to be possible. It's sort of like people become so dependent on Path Builder in such a short period of time that if you don't publish on Path Builder for Pathfinder, like, people won't even buy your product. But it
has a very negative effect on how many people will.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily they won't buy it, but it sure as hell won't help it. And in fact, it is a big selling point that we are on Path Builder and on Foundry. Like, that is a big selling point. And
it's hard to get big in Pathfinder 2e without being able to go on those, which is also part of the friction that makes it difficult for people to get big in third party on Pathfinder, because that requires
it's a lot
of resources
that
you as an author who just designs books might not have.
It's hard, because people are like, oh, I'm just going to put out a book. I'm like, you got to put out the book, and you got to put out the Path Builder, and you really got to put out the Foundry module. Like, that's the bare minimum now for Pathfinder. Really, that's the bare minimum. It's not just the book. For D&D right now, the bare minimum is still just the book. But, I imagine one day there will be, oh, well, you need to have these tools too. And that's going to probably start happening. I mean, it already is kind of happening, but since they have a tighter control over everything, they won't be as much. So, well, people are writing us. I am both looking. I just instituted, I didn't know this, someone in the Netherlands couldn't get their books because they wanted to use iDeal, which I didn't know was a payment system of the Netherlands. And I went into Shopify, I turned it on, and the person now was able to buy his books. So there you go.
Nice.
I learned something new.
There you go.
Yeah, well, that's why Shopify. That's another thing, man. Shopify. Woo.
Shopify seems really good.
Oh, it's as someone who's I hated making online cart systems, shopping cart systems. That was like the bane of my existence for my day job. And now it is just like, you do it on Shopify. That's it. That's the answer. There is no answer. It's like you just do Shopify. There used to be so many other systems. Shopify is like, you just do it. You press a couple of buttons. You throw up an inventory system. Done. And it works. It's just like, it just works. I literally went in. I just said, oh, let me see. And it had 2 check marks for bank contact and ideal. And I went, click, save.
Wow.
And then he's like,
awesome.
Thank you. And it worked. That was it. That's all I had to do. I literally hit 2 check marks and hit the save button, and I was able to check out. And that's why Shopify is winning, because that is the secret of making money for everyone, and everyone's happy. I'm happy. I was able to help someone out. This person's happy they're able to buy our products. I didn't have to like call up or do anything. I literally just hit a check mark. So there you go. Demiplane. Oh yeah, I gotta get back in touch with Demiplane. I wrote them. They're gonna get back to me. But yeah, I'm working with pretty much all the digital content creators. But
yeah, we're on Alchemy now, right?
Yeah, we're on Alchemy. We're in Alchemy. Roll20. I mean, I'm on Roll20, but the Roll20 has a lot of issues because it's you can't. So we do a lot of updates to our products. And Roll20 does not like updates. In fact, it's really not even possible. So it's extremely hard / impossible to update your products. So once it's out, it's out. And it's
very sad because I love being agile and updating things so that we can make sure everything is right and get it right before the first printing is finalized. That's my other have your cake and eat it too moment that I like about Roll for Combat compared to other times that I published books before, is because we put out the PDF earlier, people can see it. If they find a problem or two, we fix it for the first printing, because I love collecting first printings, but I also want it to be right and have the fixes.
Eldamon, we put out the PDF, and I mean, I knew this was going to happen. I wasn't upset at all.
People found
hundreds.
Literally over 100 small things in there.
They're all small.
I mean, they were tiny. They would be like, and sometimes small. They weren't like unambiguous. It'd be like the wording would be easier to understand if you slightly change this. I was like, you're right. Yeah. Let's do it. Yeah.
And sometimes we had the old verbiage in there for a spell or a special. Like we just had.
When you have that many moving parts, it would be like, oh, this Eldamon used the old name for a power, and the name got changed, but the Eldamon didn't change to the new name.
Yeah. So what we did is, by having that, I was able to, in fact, I just found a mistake that we missed, Mark, because I was like going through it, and I was like, oh crap, I never gave him, I was like, oh, I never gave him page 106. So I literally sent it to the printer. I was like, is it too late? Did you print this one? And they're like, didn't print that one. I was like, whew. So they got it in there. I was like,
awesome.
I know, I was a little worried. I was like, and that actually wasn't a small change. That actually was like, it was like a 2 lines you added to one of the powers. So I was like, hope to get that in there in time. And then actually even changed the covers slightly because I saw something I wanted to change. I wanted the drop shadows on the logos.
We're perfectionists. We're always changing things.
Well, yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah. Well, that's the issue though. So, wait until you see the classic creatures. Oh my God. We
added like 50 pages of stuff to that.
Well, I'm doing the change log for 5e, and between 5e and Pathfinder, let's see. I mean, it's single lined. It's already, how many words is it? The change log is 2,000 words, 7 pages so far. Give you an idea of how much. That's both systems, but give you an idea of how much has changed.
That's just the log. It doesn't even include all the words.
No, that's just the log of the changes. If you included the words, it would be 10, 20,000. It would be
dramatically high.
It would be a lot more.
Like it'd be. I'm sure it would be over 35,000.
Yeah, it's a lot of words. So. For better, for worse. Okay. I gotta go actually. So
No, that's fine. I think we've kind of wrapped it up.
oh,
We had
wrapped
an
it up.
interesting talk.
We wrapped it up 30
It sounds
minutes
like
ago.
we agree in certain principles about the Nerf possibilities, but disagree about whether we think it's likely or not that there are going to be a lot of them. So we mostly agree on a lot of things, but we disagree on some prognostications, and we'll see who was right when 2024
agreed.
comes out.
I just was more interested to see how the industry is changing, how it started
that's
off
fair.
in the world of Warhammer and is now slowly, not so slowly, moving to the world of MMOs and video games, where because of these online tools, for better or for worse, everything is going to turn into a video game and everything's going to use online tools. And if you really want to get nasty, and then I'll leave you with this, there was a game called The Crew. I believe it was The Crew. And
Yeah,
it was,
the one where you're space people and you
No.
you can't share information that about what cards are in your hand.
Nope. This is a video game. This is a racing car video game.
Huh.
And I think it's Ubisoft, they decided to delist the video game. They're not supporting it anymore. So they said, we're not allowing, no more sales of the video game, right? So then people who had it said, oh, okay, well, I still have the code on my computer. So hackers are going to reverse engineer to figure out how to still play it, because they literally just turned the game off, which people are like, wait, you can't just turn the game off. I bought this game. And then Ubisoft went, oh, well, we are deleting the game off your computer. They didn't just turn off the game, they then deleted your files so people couldn't reverse engineer it. So people are like, what are you doing? So how about that for a scary world where you truly don't own anything?
Wow. Also, I now think that we can have like a what kind of nerd are you test. Here's how you do it. Just fill in the blank. So there's this game called The Crew. And now say what you know about that. If you are a tabletop RPG slash board gamer nerd, you'll talk about the like critically rated board game called The Crew. And
Right.
if you're more into video games, you probably immediately know about this Ubisoft fiasco that just happened, because that sounds like it's really horrible. And you can tell which kind of nerd information that you're more in tune with based on which one you fill in the blank with.
That's true. Or if you like movies and Netflix, you can watch The Crew on Netflix, which is all about NASCAR crew as well. So there you go. There's and that actually had Kevin James on it from the King of Queens. So there's lots of crews, buddy. But yeah, it is funny. I played the board game. I actually didn't really like it that much.
It's an interesting,
I didn't like it that much.
interesting multiplayer game. I remember one of my favorite times I was playing it with Linda and some other people, and Linda was just confident. She was like, "Mark, that thing that you said was a neutral fact, is not a neutral fact, because now I know for sure one of the cards that you have." And then afterwards, she was like, "Mark, you definitely have this card." And then I showed my hand, I didn't have it. Someone else was, "No, I had that card." The thing Mark said was a totally neutral fact. It was really funny because she was just convinced. She was like, because you wouldn't have even given that that comment about the state of the thing if you didn't have it. But I didn't.
My new game is because I play on Board Game Arena. If anyone else plays in Board Game Arena and wants to play me, let me know. Because I'm on there all the time. And my new one is Feast of Odin, which I know has been around forever.
You mentioned it the last time.
Oh, it's really good. I mean, it's a very, well, because they rate these games of complexity, and that one's the 5.
Mm-hmm.
Like, most are like 2, 3, or maybe 4s out of 5s. Well, that one got a 5 out of 5, which I rarely see. And I was like, ooh, I want to see a 5 out of 5 game. And it's not hard to play, but it's got a lot of permutations. It's one of those, like, it's like chess. It's like, ooh. And I'm really enjoying it because it has aspects of Tetris, because you're getting feasts, and then you're building a feast board, and then depending
I'm
on
familiar with it.
It's really
somewhat.
fun.
It It is by a designer
Fascinating.
that I really like, Uwe Rosenberg, who also designed Agricola, which
Oh,
back
I
in
love
the day when
Agricola.
that came out
Yeah,
was a
yeah,
game that I
yeah.
played over and over again.
Yeah, it's a very. I mean,
Um,
this game's been around and people love this game, and I finally got to
But yeah,
play it.
I'm
Really
aware
good.
of Feast for Odin, more or less, and I'm not surprised that that an Uwe
Excellent.
Rosenberg game would get the 5 out of 5 complexity because they often do.
Yeah, yeah. But it's not a hard game. That's what makes it so good. It's like, it's one of those. It's like it's not a hard game. It's actually a very easy game, but there's a lot of decisions. And
There's always going to be a lot of decisions and a lot of depth.
right. There's a lot of depth and a lot of decisions, and anytime you get a Tetris board in there too, that always adds like everyone loves a Tetris board, and there's
So
literally
Linda likes fitting things into places,
Oh.
so I was looking at it because we were close to getting it
it's
at one
really
point, but
you'll
we
love
didn't.
it then because that's the whole point because you literally have a board.
Yeah, oh, I know. I'm
Yeah.
familiar with it
Oh,
because I looked into it when we were close to getting it at one point.
It's fun. Well, you can play it online, so there you go. That one, yeah, I love the Tetris boards too. Anything when you're just sitting there, just fitting it in. Play Arc Nova. Problem with Arc Nova is you're building a zoo. It's really fun, but it's so much fun to build the zoo that I don't think I've ever won. I think I've won once.
But didn't you just have fun building
I
a
just
zoo?
have fun building the zoo. Like
That's
I've played the
fine.
game 100 times and I've won one time because I'm like,
If it's
I
so
just want to build my
cool-
zoo.
But here's the thing, Steven. If it's so cool that you have fun whether you won or not, that's better than the games that you kind of feel lousy about if you lost.
It's
Because
true.
most players lose in a multiplayer game.
Yeah, no, that's
So
yeah,
more
yeah.
people will have fun if you have
It's
a
so
game
much
that's just so
fun.
fun to play that you don't need to win.
I love building. Try that one. That one's
That's
really
one thing I
fun.
like about Agricola is I'm just satisfied if I build a really great farm, whether I win or
Yeah.
lose. Now,
Yeah.
usually I win, but even if I lost, if my farm had enough points,
But usually
like-
I win.
usually I win. But if my farm has the number of points I'm satisfied with and somebody else's farm is even better than that, I'm still very happy. As long as my farm isn't lousy, then I feel good about it. And I
Agricola-
like games like that.
Agricola has a 3 out of 5 complexity. By the way.
Oh, interesting. So it's much less complex on there.
Yes, I'm looking. Actually, you know what? One of my favorite games is. What do you think of? It just was added. Actually, this game. There's a few games I'm very good at, and some I'm not so
Mhm.
great at. But this one I destroy at is Citadels, especially when you
Citadels.
play
I've played it one time
8
before.
or 9 players, because that's a 9-player. It's a deduction game, but it's not werewolf. It's an actual game.
Is it deduction? I thought that you just like
Well, you play different roles, and you have to then decide what roles to take to either add to your district or mess up other people's
Right.
districts. But you have to figure out how people are playing. There is deduction to it. It's like poker. It's like
it's more like poker. It's
yeah,
a
okay,
bluffing.
it's
I
closer
would
to
call
poker.
it more about bluffing.
It's very
I mean,
much
there's
like
some
poker.
deduction.
Yes. Okay, I'd say
I
it's
only played it
poker.
once, to be
Oh,
fair.
I love that game. And
I thought it was
I also
good.
love
I
poker.
like the way that when you're coming to a card game like that has a bunch of people playing together, another one that sometimes offered is Seven Wonders, and I like Citadel better because Seven Wonders was way too like weirdly kingmakey based on like where you're sitting. Whereas Citadel, I felt like you could really interact with everybody, and you didn't have some situation where have you ever played Seven Wonders?
yeah, not for a long time, but I have.
So the thing that I've found in Seven Wonders is that the person who's not sitting next to one of the two people who are right next to each other racing for military wins the game. Because there's going to be, in a lot of games, two people are next to each other and are racing for military. Then the other neighbors of those people are just like, forget it. There's a race between these other two people. I'm just not going to take any. And so then player number 5, who's next to both of the players who have already given up on military, is like, oh, well, I'll just take like 2 or 3. And then they get massive numbers of points every time, and they win the game. Unless there's somebody who goes science and everybody prisoner's dilemma checks out and is like, I'm not going to help stop them on science because you helped stop them on science, then that's like the only way to beat that player.
Well,
And both of those are a little degenerate. Whereas Citadel's, the time that I played it, it felt like you really could interact with everybody on the board and you could think about what they were
now,
doing.
the best thing about Citadels is that it's the only 8 or 9 player game that I've ever played that goes very quickly, very smoothly. It's a lot of fun and it's very even. And it's most of those games end up being terrible, and they're slow, and you could wait half an hour for your turn. But this game goes really fast, and you're always doing something. So I love it. It's been around forever. Game's like 25, 30 years old, so it's really good. Anyhow,
All right. Well, you've got to go.
I've
got to go. And so let's go.
All right.
And so everyone, until next time, if you want to battle the zoo, you have to roll for combat.
And don't forget Kickstarter.rollforcombat.com if you want some dragons.
Dragons!